Health Secretary Steve Barclay says he's keen to continue talking about what is affordable in the ongoing dispute over NHS pay. But despite this, thousands of ambulance workers have gone on strike today.
Members of the unions Unite, GMB and Unison all walking out across much of England and Wales, and there are further strikes planned this week and into February and March. NHS England says, regardless of strike action, patients who need urgent medical care must come forward. Well, joining us now from a picket line in Chorley is the General Secretary of the Unite Union, Sharon Graham. Very good morning to you, Sharon Graham. Before we talk about the actual negotiations, we've heard this morning that your members in the North East and East Midlands have now pulled out of the strikes. Can you confirm that?
No, actually, our members in the North East and East Midlands, there are strategic strikes happening across different parts of the country. They are going to be joining the strike on the 6th of February. We've got very small membership in both of those areas, and it thought strategically better for them to be on the 6th of February. I'm here as part of the 1,500 Unite ambulance workers who are out on strike today in Chorley. And obviously what we're looking for is for this government to come to the table and give these workers the deal that they deserve.
So they pulled out of strike action today, but will be taking part in strike action on the 6th of February, those areas, the North East and East Midlands.
No.
Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, I'm just saying that what needs to happen as far as this government's concerned is that Rishi Sunak, who is actually the CEO of UK PLC, he is the ultimate employer here. He needs to come to the table and do the deal for these workers. He is literally missing in action. I have not seen this man talk about the NHS for weeks. He needs to come to the table, do the proper deal for these workers so these workers can go back to work.
The Health Secretary says that he's talking about what is affordable. Are you having discussions over pay with the Health Secretary?
Well, I think it's totally disingenuous for the Health Secretary to be saying that. That is absolutely a lie. And I use that word very deliberately because that's what it is. We have not been in any talks with the Health Secretary for 2022-23 pay. He is talking about the possibility of pay for 23-24. We're talking about 22-23 pay. It's totally wrong for him to be suggesting that we are talking on pay. But it's very, very clear that the Health Secretary has no mandate, he has no authority. What needs to happen now is Rishi Sunak needs to come out of hiding, come to the negotiating table with the General Secretaries of the unions and deal with this issue of pay.
OK. Meanwhile, whatever anyone watching thinks about the merits of both arguments, they will be once again extremely concerned that there may be circumstances today they need to call 999. If they are in that situation, what will happen in any part of the country where there's strike action?
So look, we've been really, really careful. We were on the 21st. I was in the West Midlands then on the 21st to make sure that we've got what's called life and limb cover. And our representatives have been in local negotiations, because that's how these things are done, obviously trying to make sure that we are covering all Category 1s and some major Category 2 calls. So we're doing everything in our power to make sure that we are covering anything serious. But I would say it is unreal that the government doesn't seem to be worried about minimum service levels in normal play. 500 people die a week. And I'll repeat that because it's so startling. 500 people die a week because they're waiting for an ambulance in the 5th richest economy in the world. It's totally unacceptable. But of course, Susanna, we're going to do everything we can. We have been in all of these disputes to make sure that there is life and limb cover.
Sharon Graham, it was reported last week that the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, was urging the trade unions to lobby the Treasury to release more money for the NHS. Did you get asked to lobby on behalf of the Health Secretary?
Well, to be honest with you, the Health Secretary doesn't seem to have any authority, and there is a really good example there, Ed, of exactly what I mean. If we're being asked to lobby the Treasury, what that means is that we've got the wrong people in the room. Normally in a negotiation, you get the decision makers in a room. If Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are the decision makers, get them in the room with the General Secretaries so we can solve this dispute. We are crying out for this dispute to be solved. It's been 5 weeks since my members in the ambulance service have been out on strike, and not one single move, not one dot, not one comma, not one offer has come to those people. So it's clear now that Stephen Barclay is not the right person. We need Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, if necessary, in the room. We will be there anytime, any place, anywhere to come and try and solve this dispute.
And how much difference would it make, do you think, if it was Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves in the room instead? Obviously, Unite is affiliated to the Labour Party. Mick Lynch, the train leader, RMT, is not affiliated. He's been rather praising of Keir Starmer, says he'd like him to be Prime Minister. You've been a little bit more sceptical about Keir Starmer and whether he would really be able to make a difference for your workers?
Well, look, what I've said is, of course, I prefer a Labour government. There's no doubt about that. I think they would treat workers more fairly and they would do things very differently. But they are not the government that I'm dealing with currently. As far as Keir Starmer is concerned, I do want him to be a bit more bold on this issue. I want him to come out and say that these workers should get a pay rise. I don't think there is any problem in saying that. And I'd like him to say that it would be a pay rise of double digits if he was the Prime Minister. But to be honest with you, he isn't the Prime Minister currently. I have a different Prime Minister that I'm dealing with, and I'm calling on that Prime Minister today to stop this lunacy and come in the room and do this deal. That is what he needs now to do.
You said at the weekend that Keir Starmer was a bad tribute act when you were talking to Nick Robinson for his podcast. You said that you got the Tory party wanting to be Margaret Thatcher and the Labour Party wanting to be Tony Blair. So Keir Starmer is a bad tribute act because he wants to be like Tony Blair. What did you mean by that?
Well, look, what I mean is this, is that we are in very different times. The country is in very different times than it was in the 80s and the 90s. And what I said was that I felt sometimes like I was watching two bad tribute acts, one group wanting to be Margaret Thatcher and the other group wanting to be Tony Blair. We are not in the 80s, we're certainly not in the 90s. What we need now is leaders to take the bull by the horns, deal with the issues that are in front of them. Let's look forward, not look back. But as far as today is concerned, what I'm looking for is this government, the Conservative government, who have been elected by the people, to listen to their people, because all the surveys show that everybody wants this sorted out, and actually they are on the side of the striking NHS workers. So Rishi Sunak needs to come to the table, do the deal, and let these people back to work.
Of course, Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair both did win quite a few general elections. With your predecessor, Len McCluskey, it was never quite clear whether he actually wanted Labour to win the election, but you do want Labour to win the election.
Well, look, I don't want to look back or talk about other issues really this morning, Ed. What I'm interested this morning about is my members out on strike, and I'm calling on Rishi Sunak to come to the table and do the deal and negotiate this deal for these members who are out here again on strike.
Yeah, so you don't want to tell us whether you want Labour to win the election?
Well, I think I've already said that, I think, in a previous question. Of course I'd prefer Labour to win the election because I think they'll do better for workers. Of course I do. But to be honest, today is not about that. Today is about these striking ambulance workers who have been put out on the street yet again because this government are not coming to the table to negotiate. I'm calling on them to come to the table and negotiate so that we can now finish this dispute and these workers can go back to work.
All right, Sharon Graham, thank you very much indeed from the Unite Union. It's interesting, isn't it? There's an ambulance in the background and on it says swift action saves lives. But today, you know, unless you're category 1 or the more serious category 2, yeah, I mean, honestly, good luck if you need to call an ambulance. It's such a concern. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says he's hugely disappointed some ambulance workers continuing to take industrial action. They have contingency plans in place to mitigate risk to patient safety, but there will inevitably be further disruption. That's the statement from Steve Barclay. I must have missed the bit where Mick Lynch was praising Sir Keir Starmer, because the last time I heard him speak, he talked about him as a vanilla politician and said that he was missing in action.
Yep.
He said, where is he on the picket line?
He did, but I think to be fair to Mick Lynch, he has said he would prefer a Labour government to a Conservative government.
Yeah,
and
is that a surprise from union leaders?
I thought, it was good that Sharon said that.
Yeah.
I wasn't totally sure I knew what the answer was going to be.
No.
So, there we are.
Well, when she calls Sir Keir Starmer a bad Tony Blair tribute act, you might be left wondering.
It tells you the state of how things have been in politics. So that's an insult.
Yeah.